in at number 10, we have a professional bridesmaid. This is a whole different step up from being a wedding party planner. A professional bridesmaid is a service wherein a lady will come and help you out on your wedding day, taking all of the stress of wedding planning off your shoulders. This service is also great for people who don't already know someone who can fit the role, which actually makes me feel a bit sad. The first official full-time bridesmaid for hire was Jen Glantz, who set up website Bridesmaid for Hire after she received an overwhelming response from a Craigslist posting. On her site, Jen writes that she is a bridesmaid who will be there to lift up the 18 layers of your dress so you can pee or dance the cha-cha slide with your drunk uncle. Glamorous. Coming in at number 9, we have food stylist. Food stylists make sure that food looks great and natural in unnatural environments. For example, under the hot lights of a photo shoot or film set. A food stylist's number one job is to make food look delicious, even if that actually isn't the case in real life. They'll work on movies, commercials, photo shoots for magazines, cookbooks, and even restaurant menus and signage. They'll have a set of tools with them like tweezers or sometimes even paints, and are ultimately looking to prep food to look as mouth-watering as possible. Yum. Although I have to say, the number one rule of being a food stylist is don't eat the food, so perhaps our number 8 job would suit me better. Coming in at number 8, we have ice cream taster. Yes! Where do I sign up? Get me that sweet, sweet ice cream right now. Each ice cream brand is likely to employ a taste tester or even several. Meet John Harrison, the 75-year-old ice cream tester for Drea's Grand Ice Cream. His taste buds are said to be worth $1 million, and he was once awarded the prestigious American Tasting Institute's Master Taster of the Year title. The average workday of an ice cream taster will span around 5 hours or so, in which a taster will taste around 20 different ice creams at 3 different stages of production. This sounds great, like, yes. Although to be honest, this next job sounds pretty awesome too. Coming in at number 7, we have fortune cookie writer. In September 2015, news publication The Guardian published a really interesting article called Meet the Aspiring Writers Behind Your Fortune Cookie Messages. It was really eye-opening, as I'd never actually thought about anyone doing that as a job before. According to the article, the job of supplying you with a fortune in your sweet treat goes to struggling writers and even high school students. Apparently the writers are paid 75 cents each per fortune, so you better get your crystal ball at the ready, as you're gonna need some pretty serious fortune-telling powers to get rich from this one. Coming in at number 6, we have owner of a dog hotel. This would be the dream job for many people out there. Being a hotelier is one thing, but imagine being a dog hotelier. Like, no more snooty customers with various complaints, just happy dogs who want you to rub their bellies. Dog boarding businesses have been going for a long time, but a dog hotel is way fancier than your average kennel. This is the kind of service for luxury clients who want to give their dogs a relaxing vacation. Some luxury dog hotels have bone-shaped pools for dogs to play in, as well as offering dog massages. Oh, there's another job that you wouldn't have believed existed. Dog masseuse. I guess it's like being a full-time belly rubber. Great. Coming in at number 5, we have Raven Master. In case you are unaware of strange British traditions, let me fill you right in. Legend has it that there must be at least 6 ravens at the Tower of London, if not England will fall. Obviously, we Brits aren't about to let that happen, so these days the Tower of London employs a full-time Raven Master, which may be the coolest job title ever. Hey Rebecca, what do you do for a living? Raven Master. The Raven Master keeps the ravens at the Tower of London happy and, in the tower. The current holder of the job is Chris Scaff, and he had an interview with BuzzFeed last year in which he revealed that he feeds the ravens blood-soaked biscuits, so there's that. Okay, up next we have a cool job with a cringy title. This actually makes my skin crawl every time I hear it. No. In at number 4, we have influencer. Yuck. Influencers are people with very strong social media followings, like for example Snapchat, Instagram or Twitter, and these people get paid to promote brands via their posts. For example, an Instagram influencer will command upwards of $100 a post to feature a certain type of tea for a company. Another will take a picture of them using a certain kind of hand cream, and so on and so forth. For me though, the problem is in the word. Influencing. Influencer. Like, are you influenced yet? It's too much. It's too millennial. Stop. Okay, so a cracking job up next. In at number 3, we have professional wench. There are loads of places that employ professional wenches. How crazy is that? A wench. A wench wench, by the way, if you didn't know, is usually a buxom woman from times gone by who worked in taverns and bars serving drinks and just being sassy. Sounds like my ideal job once again. The London Dungeon employs several full-time wenches, as do many medieval banquet halls. Hey Rebecca, wanna go see a movie on Thursday? Ooh, sorry, I can't. I'm busy being a wench. Okay. So, actually, I am kind of lying. The official job title here is actor, but they only play one part, and that is wench. I love it! Coming in at number 2, all of the fun, and probably a really good way to work your abs and we have mattress jumper. Several mattress companies have been known to hire mattress jumpers to test their mattresses after production. Meet Ruben Reynoso, a professional mattress jumper from the McRoski factory in San Francisco. To him, his work is very serious and absolutely is not a joke. The aim of a mattress jumper is to compress the layers of cotton and seek out any imperfections. I for one think I would really enjoy jumping for a living, like I could do this all day. Okay, so coming in at number 1 of the jobs you won't believe exist part 2, we have human scarecrow. In 2012, a university graduate made headlines as he took up a job as a human scarecrow. Jamie Foxx graduated with a music and English degree from Bangor University, only to take up a £250 a week job scaring partridges away from a field. This field was located in Aylsham and was comprised of oilseed rape. Very important, but very attractive to partridges. He didn't totally abandon his degree though, he strummed a ukulele while he worked. Farmers employed him as conventional scarecrows just weren't working, they weren't scaring the birds anymore. And this is a familiar tale at other farms across the world too. Jamie isn't the only person to work as a professional scarecrow. There are others out there. If you're watching and you're a professional scarecrow, hi!
With number 10, we have a kids camp packing consultant. Yeah, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that this job exists because some super rich parents are just too lazy to help their kids pack for summer camp. That doesn't sound surprising, but what's shocking is that these professional packers can actually make up to $250 an hour. I mean, is this real life right now? Be right back. I'm quitting YouTube because I just found myself a new career. Alright, I'm back because no one wanted to hire me. I told them I'd pack their kids' bags and then they threatened to call the cops. Alright, all jokes aside, these guys can actually make up to $250 an hour. I guess some people just have money to burn, like literally. But then again, they don't pack a typical suitcase. Sometimes these professional packers get really strange requests, like pack 10 bags or even packing things to recreate the kid's entire bedroom. I mean seriously, when I was a kid, I had to pack my own suitcase. I just throw in some clothes. I'm supposed to throw in a toothbrush, but I didn't. I would play my Game Boy. Yeah, you guys know what that is? I'm talking about the Game Boy without the light attachments because they never had those back then. But you know what? Maybe the world is full of Kevin McAllisters.
I don't know how to pack a suitcase. I've never done this once in my whole life.
Tough.
That's what Megan said.
What did I say? You told Kevin tough.
The dope was whining about a suitcase. What am I supposed to do? Shake his hand and say congratulations, you're an idiot?
Real life mannequins stare us in at number 9. I mean, no way, this can't actually be a job in today's world. It's like we're taking a step backwards because we've literally created plastic mannequins for the sole purpose of modeling clothes. And now we want to pay someone to just stand like super still for hours and hours to model their clothes. I mean, can't you just get rid of them and just pay $0 for a mannequin? This sounds almost like torture. So there are actually a few different types of human mannequins. First, we have the typical stand in a store window mannequin, and then we have these live mannequins who have designers who make clothes like to their body and molds to their body. Now this job actually makes sense because when a company is designing their clothes, they'll be able to see how the fabric moves with a real person instead of a stiff plastic mannequin with unrealistic measurements. You ever walk into a store and you're like, damn, I want that shirt. You take it home and you're like, where's all those muscles? Like, they make these mannequins ripped. And when I first heard about these real life mannequins, this is what I pictured. Closet exorcist that jumps into number 8. I actually think I need one of these because we have a ghost in our bedroom. I'm not kidding. And don't worry, I'm not talking about this kind of closet exorcist. Would you guys believe that some people pay a closet exorcist to decide what stays and what needs to go from their wardrobe? Okay, wait, hold on. So this closet exorcist isn't to get rid of ghosts? Who needs you? Get the heck out of here. Why are you telling me what needs to go or stay? Everything needs to stay. I don't care if I have a hornet for like years. And how about this? Instead of spending your money on someone to go through your clothes, you can spare 1 to 2 hours from your Sunday afternoon and get it done. Or just stare at it for an hour and just decide you don't want to get rid of anything. A professional stander brings us to number 7. What is this? Okay, well there's a service that allows you to hire someone to wait in long lineups for you. So the days of you waiting in line to buy concert tickets or maybe the new release of the iPhone, well those days are over. You know, Black Friday or Boxing Day, yeah, those days are also over as well, because you can just pay a little bit of money and you can have them stand in line for you. I mean, what has this world come to? I mean, you have online shopping. You don't even need to pay someone to wait in line because you don't even need to be in a lineup anymore. You literally can sit in your home in your underwear, or maybe that's just me. Then you can order pretty much anything you want. Me, recently, I've been ordering a lot of Pokemon cards. Shh. And I might have ordered some toilet paper. So why are we waiting in these long lineups? And yeah, that was actually a true story. I ordered toilet paper on Amazon because I really needed it and it said it would come that night. I got Amazon Prime. Okay, you know what? Maybe I spoke a little bit too soon because this person will actually wait in those long DMV lines. You know, if you're at LCBO, you don't want to buy liquor online. Those lineups can be long. Maybe Disney World, maybe they can wait in those lines as well, but in front of all those kids. And then when it's your turn, you butt everyone and just go there and then they leave. I don't know, guys. This is kind of getting really dumb here, but let's move on. Let's continue this. Number 6, we have an electric shock person. Have you ever had the urge to feel what it was like to be electrocuted? Yeah, me neither. But apparently there are a bunch of people who are just dying to be electrocuted. No pun intended. They don't sound like the brightest crayon in the box, but apparently it is a very popular thing to do in Mexico City. Lots of tourists, they'll line up to play a game where you hold 2 metal bars and allow yourself to be electrocuted all for fun. My idea of a good time in Mexico is going to the beach, not shocking myself. So this professional shocker, well, you pay them and they'll shock you. So that's how they make their money. Lipstick readers kiss their way onto this list at number 5. This person is similar to a palm reader, but instead of reading palms, the lipstick reader will tell you things about your past, present, and future, just from your lip imprint. So I'm not sure what my dry lips are telling me right now. I think it's telling me to go get some chapstick. Well, this sounds like a really far-fetched idea to me. I don't see how the lines in your lips or hands can tell you things about your life, but maybe I'm wrong. Have you guys ever had this done? Have you ever had a psychic tell you your future, and was it ever accurate? A lot of people say that psychics are con people who use the power of persuasion while others swear by them. I've seen so many of these psychics, like they just go out of business. I wonder if they saw their own future. Next up, number 4, we have the human shield. This sounds like a super dangerous job, but trust me, it's not what you're thinking. Drivers in Iran are hiring people to run behind their cars in order to outsmart their city traffic cameras. Apparently, there are a lot of driving restrictions in the city of Tehran, and you have to pay a lot in order to drive in certain lanes. So instead of spending money on a weekly or get an annual pass, they hire people to block their license plates so the camera won't detect them and send them a bill in the mail. That's actually pretty funny if you think about it, but it actually has become a really big problem there. A professional pusher makes its way onto this list at number 3. So I told you that there were a lot of jobs out there, but this one sounds really far-fetched. We all know how busy it can get on underground trains during rush hour, but would you believe that people are hired in Tokyo to actually push people onto the train during the morning and evening rushes? This sounds so insane to me, but it's real. There has to be a better system. But honestly, you know what? It doesn't sound like that terrible of a job. You are getting paid to just push people around. It sounds like this job can get a little rough at times, but I wonder how much it pays, because I'm considering applying. But you know what, instead of cramming people into the subway systems like that, like a can of sardines, they should actually do the reverse. They should have professional pullers. It's like, okay guys, this train is way too full. You get out of there, and you get the heck out of there. What are you thinking? Toilet paper sniffer takes us to the number 2 spot. No pun intended. If you have a high sense of smell, then this job is for you. Big paper towel companies pay people to sniff their products before they're shipped out to the factory so that they can make sure they don't smell weird. I didn't know that this was a huge issue for these companies, but like other jobs, I guess somebody has to do it. And it doesn't sound like a terrible job. All you have to do is sniff all day. I mean, it could be a lot worse. I mean, there are people out there who are professional deodorant sniffers. So they smell people's armpits to see if the deodorant is doing their job. And finally, topping our list of the top 10 dumbest jobs that actually exist. And at number 1, we have the rental boyfriend. Yep, that's right, a rental boyfriend. Shopping malls in China have started a service where you can go and rent a boyfriend for 30 minutes at a time. But the only service that they will do are hold your bags, take photos, chat, and shop with you. I mean, this is a little bit sexist, but you can even go to the store, scan QR codes, and pay for the service on your phone. And yeah, it's that easy to rent your very own boyfriend.
Number 10, we have rat catcher. These days, people still definitely work in pest control, but their techniques are less rudimentary. Rat catchers were vital in Europe, especially during the infestations of the 1800s. We all know that plagues are largely spread by rats, so it's very important to keep vermin numbers to a minimum. Rat catchers would be employed to catch and kill rats, often trapping them in cages. They were often accompanied by dogs who would help them seek out the vermin. Coming in at number 9, we have ice cutters. Ah, the life before freezers. Can you even imagine? These days, if I wanted some ice, I'd just go fill up my ice tray, pop it in the freezer and wait an hour or so. But it wasn't so easy back in the day. Before public refrigeration, people, usually strong men, used to cut up giant blocks of ice from lakes. Specifically, these were to be used as cooling blocks through the summer months. Being an ice cutter was a very dangerous job. Cutters would risk hypothermia, which they would almost inevitably get if they fell into the cut ice holes. Coming in at number 8, we have milkmen. Or women, because why not? Okay, so some small places in some countries do still have them, but by and large, the job of being a milkman no longer exists. Milkmen were prolific up until around the 1960s. Now this was when their jobs began to wane on account of the modern refrigeration systems. They also began to lose out to the abundant availability of milk in local convenience stores. Milkmen would drive around delivering fresh milk on quaint little carts and deliver them to people's door. I remember there being a milkman in the little village that I grew up in, but I really don't think they have him anymore. Most villages have let their milk people go, and to be honest, in the cities it's like a long past thing. Coming in at number 7, we have a miner's canary. Okay, sure, this isn't a human job, but nobody said it had to be. The hours were rubbish, the pay was non-existent, and the danger levels were high. Canaries were used as an early warning system for miners. Basically, the birds would constantly chirp, but if toxic gases such as methane and carbon monoxide were released, they would be the first to drop. It's pretty sad, isn't it? It's like a test canary. Basically, the miners knew that if the birds stopped chirping, they needed to get out of there immediately. Miners' canaries were used up until the late 80s. Coming in at number 6, we have a lector. Ooh, I like the sound of this job. Lectors were people hired to entertain factory workers during the earlier parts of the Industrial Revolution. Before the days of your favourite podcasts or even the radio, factory workers got pretty bored. To tackle this, workers either clubbed together to hire lectors to read to them, or if they were lucky, their bosses might pay for them. The lectors would read news articles or even popular books. Sometimes though, lectors were concerning to factory owners because they used to read out union material. Coming in at number 5, we have a coal stoker. I mean, who can be bothered to sit there stoking coal for hours on end? What a grueling job. Coal stokers were vital on steam engines and ships in the days before electronic engines. Stoking coal was indeed a grueling and arduous task. Workers would essentially just keep on shoveling coal onto a very, very hot fire. Coming in at number 4, we have a humour drainer. I mean, I know a few modern day humor drainers, but they're just dull people who don't get paid for being dull. Humor drainers actually used to do something entirely different than people who just suck fun out of situations. That's right, back in the days before modern medicine, roughly between the Egyptian and Greek eras, people had humors drained. What are you talking about? Well, doctors believed in 4 balancing elements called humors. These made up the human body, or so they thought. These humors were black bile, yellow bile, phlegm, and blood, and when the humors were unbalanced, a person would be ill, according to ye olde doctors anyway. If someone had too much of one humor, they were treated. For example, if they had too much blood, they would have their blood drained. Blech. Coming in at number 3, we have body snatchers. During the Age of Enlightenment, scientists became fascinated with the human body and medical schools wanted them for dissection. The problem was that people were still quite religious and thought that the body was needed in the afterlife. This all meant that bodies were pretty hard to get hold of. Enter the body snatcher. For a fee, they would obtain a body for scientific endeavour, although it was never entirely legal. Coming in at number 2, we have a computer. A computer? A job? What are you on, Rebecca? No, seriously, a computer was the name given to people, usually women, who dealt with number data and calculation. The job was very popular between World War I and World War II and required applicants with excellent mental arithmetic skills. Okay, I mean, this one is pretty controversial and I'm pleased it doesn't exist today because, well, creepy. Coming in at number 1, we have a female masturbator. Back in the Victorian times, those doctor folk, who by the way were all men, were pretty concerned about something that they called female hysteria. Now this was almost entirely a made up thing that was actually often a misdiagnosis of epilepsy, anxiety and stress. Women displaying signs of hysteria were often massaged to bring them to orgasm in the hope of alleviating the symptoms. This is widely acknowledged as the history behind the invention of the vibrator, by the way.
But like we always do, with our number 10, it's the shark suit tester. No, not this kind of shark suit. This kind of shark suit. The one that helps protect divers from sharks that want to take a chunk out of them. They're usually made out of a stainless steel mesh such as the net tunic, but it's no good just saying something is shark proof, it needs to be tested. It's the shark suit tester's job to wear new and often experimental fabrics to see how they hold up against hungry sharks. They have to dive down wearing them and stir up the waters with blood until the sharks start attacking them in a feeding frenzy as they pray that the new suit does the job. On a good day, they just get attacked by sharks, and on a bad day, they get seriously injured by them. Either way, I don't think it's a job many people want to take. At number 9 now, we've got a septic tank technician. A septic tank is basically a small scale sewage treatment system that fills up with and safely disposes of everything people in the area flush down the toilet. But what is out of sight and mind for you is someone else's day job. Just like everything in this world, septic tanks need a clean from time to time. Roughly every 3 years, a septic tank technician has to get down and dirty with a 1,000-gallon tank of feces and pump it into their truck. They need to stir it up as well to keep it flowing and have to keep their mouths closed unless they want to accidentally taste any of it. And as you're doing that, if you accidentally block it, well guess what? You're the septic tank technician, so you have to actually climb inside and unclog the thing. On to number 8 now, and we've got a hotel maid. Yes, that's right, when you leave a hotel, people often leave behind any thought of what poor soul has to come along and deal with the often disgusting mess that some customers leave behind. There are many horror stories floating around that have come from actual hotel maids and what they find. From rotten food in the fridge, vomit on the bed sheets to pee all over the bathroom floor, they've seen it all. Some maids even tell tales of poo on the towels, used condoms on the floor, and drug needles everywhere. And I also think it's such an underappreciated job. I mean, if you guys think about it, it's actually the maid that makes your room and experience that nice, and no one ever seems to thank them. Well, if you are a hotel maid watching this, on behalf of everyone, I just want to say thank you, and I'm sorry your job made it onto this list, but it's a pretty rough gig. At number 7 now, we're going to get our dig on and talk about sulfur miners, not coal miners. These guys actually have it even worse than them. On the Indonesian island of Java, there is a volcanic crater called Kawah Ijen. It spews out lumps of pure sulfur, which is a valuable mineral used in all kinds of things from matches to rubber and cosmetics and sugar. Sulfur miners risk their lives to get hold of this stuff by climbing 9,000 feet up to the volcano's summit and then 3,000 feet down into the crater. The heat is said to be unbearable. the air is thick and dangerous, and once they get the sulfur, they have to carry up to 200 pounds of the stuff back down the steep slopes. And at the end of this hazardous journey, they end up making just $11 a day on average, and many of them end up with twisted and damaged spines and legs. So far so good, guys, but coming in at number 6 now, we're going to talk about a noodler. The job of a noodler has nothing to do with noodles and everything to do with catching catfish. Unlike other fish, which are often caught with rods or nets, catching a catfish requires a special technique. The noodler has to cover their arms and hands with the bait, which is made up of fish guts, worms and waste. Once they've smeared it all over themselves, they dive into the water and stick their hands into a catfish hole. If all goes to plan, the catfish bites their hand and they drag it up to the surface. This job can put the noodler at risk of losing a finger, either from the initial bite itself or an infection from a wound inflicted by the catfish. And sometimes even if they do manage to find a catfish hole, there might not actually be a catfish living in it anymore. Other animals will go into abandoned catfish holes like beavers and snapping turtles and even crocodiles that could bite back at them. I just hope that catfish is worth it. Halfway through now, guys, at number 5, and we're going to head over to an oil rig because life working on a rig can be pretty grim indeed. For starters, it's one of the most dangerous jobs around. An oil rig worker spends an average of 12 hours a day dealing with oil, a highly combustible substance. This can sometimes lead to explosions and fires, and if that happens, help isn't close by at all. And if the threat of explosions or mechanical accidents doesn't get to you, then the loneliness might. Oil rig workers spend 1 to 2 weeks away from home at a time, sometimes being stationed 70 miles out to sea. On top of that, job security doesn't look too great for the average oil worker these days. The rise of solar panel energy has left some experts predicting a decline for the need in oil rigs and therefore the workers who run them. But on the plus side, if you are really good at the job, you might get asked to save the planet from an asteroid like Bruce Willis did, so silver lining to everything. Coming in now at number 4, we've got a vomit collector. These aren't people who have a hobby in collecting other people's puke. No, these are the people who clear up what you throw up. In ancient times, the Romans would have people whose job it was to clear up the vomit of people who had intentionally eaten too much and then been sick all over the floor, so that they could continue stuffing their faces all over again. In modern times, you can find vomit cleaners mopping away in almost any industry you can think of where people spew their guts up, most notably at theme parks. Some roller coasters make people vom so much they actually have to hire full-time vomit collectors just to keep the whole place running. It's mad. But apparently one of the perks of that job is that they do get to ride the roller coasters for free, so they can clear up their own vomit for a change. But at number 3 now, guys, we're talking about dangerous dives as an underwater welder. This job is quite simply the most dangerous job in the world. It's carried out by marine engineers to repair structures deep underwater. Threats include electrocution, explosions and drowning, to name but a few. These have led underwater welders to have a 15% mortality rate. Let that sink in for a second. 15% of underwater welders will die doing that job. To put that into perspective, you're about 1,000 times more likely to be killed on the job as an underwater welder than as a police officer. The biggest threat in this job is electrocution, because although they do take great care to waterproof their tools and use a low voltage, it's hard to escape the fact that these people are using electrical equipment underwater, and it's only a matter of time before those two things don't mix. Alright, next up, guys, we've got a job that makes me want to oil up my beard, grab my plaid shirt and head off into the woods until I hear more details about it. At number 2, we've got the lumberjack, also known as the logger. Cutting down trees for a living means long hours and back-breaking work with a high risk of injury. Sometimes a worker's day can be 12 or 13 hours long and involves dealing with the dangers of heavy machinery. As expected with such equipment, things can and do go wrong, leading to injuries and even death. Logging stations are often in remote locations with no quick way to get in or out. In 2014, the website careercast.com ranked this job as the #1 worst in the world. On top of that, market competition, a decline in demand for timber, and the introduction of logging machines means that this industry is expected to have shrunk by 9% in 2022. Alright guys, so we've looked at a whole bunch of terrible jobs, but now we've reached our number 1, and it's a job that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemies. Can't believe I'm saying this, it's a used tampon squeezer. Seriously. When scientists want to research vaginal infections such as STDs, they need people to collect samples and specimens from used tampons to study. They want to study the bacteria in the liquid from them, and the best way to do that is to give it a good old squeeze. That's right, some poor person goes to work and spends their day squeezing other people's bodily fluids out of used tampons. It's an important job in the fight against STDs, but it's probably the least glamorous one around. Before anyone freaks out too much though, they do get to wear protective gloves. I do feel like wearing gloves is kind of a small consolation prize here. I think the real issue is the squeezing the used tampons thing, but hey, someone has to do it. It just means you end up topping this list.
In at number 10, we have a knocker-upper. Okay, so this is not what you think it is. It sounds dubious, but this actually refers to a human alarm clock. The practice was very popular in working class towns in the UK and Ireland in the 1800s up until the mid 1900s. Knocker-uppers were people that used to have long sticks to knock on windows and often whistles to wake people up so they were on time for work. I mean, to be totally honest, the struggle must have been really real before alarm clocks existed, so these persistent fellows made sure that those who needed to be up were up. Unfortunately for them, the practice started to die out in the 1940s and 50s as alarm clocks became common practice in the home. Now, physical alarm clocks are pretty much over too, with the invention of phones that have that capability. In at number 9, we have a pin setter. Pin setters were the poor souls that had to brave big, heavy balls coming to crush them as they reset the 10 pins at a bowling alley. This job was usually a low-paid position taken up by teenage boys, although there was one huge benefit. Often the lads that worked this job were allowed to bowl for free. Pretty sweet if you're a kid that just wants to bowl. As automatic pin setters were introduced, the job slowly died out between the 1950s and the 1970s. Next up, we have an absolute Victorian classic. Coming in at number 8, we have the chimney sweep. While you can still pay companies to come and clean your chimney, the classic chimney sweep job, as it was popularised in literature by Oliver Twist, no longer exists. The chimney sweep that comes to mind is actually the main sweep's apprentice, a climbing boy as they were known. These were children as young as 4 years old who were tasked with climbing up a narrow chimney shaft to clear blockages. This would stop the chimneys from blowing smoke into a room, so it was kind of important. This kind of practice was happening up until the late 19th century, when concerns were raised over the amount of children dying on the job. Often they'd get trapped, suffocate, or be scorched from a lit fire. Soot was then collected and sold on, with the boys cleaning around 5 fireplaces a day. A practice of hardening was used by their masters, who would purposefully burn their knees and elbows, then rub them with a strong brine using a brush. This basically stopped them getting more easily hurt on the job, slowing down work. In at number 7, we have a lamplighter. Back when streets were lit by candlelight and gas lamps, lamplighters were employed to light and extinguish them. Lamplighters would usually light the streetlights with a wick on a long stick at dusk and then extinguish the flames at dawn. They would also carry out maintenance on the lights, making sure candles or the gas was replaced. These days, almost all street lighting is generated by electricity, so we no longer have a need for this profession. In at number 6, it would have been a great job for me at the time, we have a town crier. Hear ye, hear ye. That's what they say. Town criers used to be people who would ring a bell in a town or city centre and declare the news to all that would listen. These were the main sources of communication and information for townsfolk and the government. At this time, most people couldn't read, so they needed to hear the news. For example, if the King of England had a child, a town crier would ring his bell and announce it in the street to rapturous applause. The same would go for information regarding taxes or town notices, such as reminders not to urinate in the river the day before water was collected to make beer. Good times, those were the days. These days they do still exist for traditional festivals and occasions, but they aren't a proper salaried job, they'll almost always be held by volunteers. In at number 5, we have a plague doctor. I find these so interesting. When the plague was an issue sweeping through Europe in the 1600s, some people had a job of seeing to the terminally ill. These people were the plague doctors. You did not want to be a plague doctor, mainly because the plague was a highly contagious, incurable disease that almost always resulted in an untimely and undignified death. In the 1620s, plague doctors adopted a bizarre costume invented by Charles de la Orme, which consisted of a heavy wax coat and what was essentially a bird mask, which is kind of creepy. The beak of the mask was stuffed with herbs, straw and spices, and to be honest with you, like, the look of the heavy jacket and the mask made people look kind of nightmarish. Also, given the nature of their work, which included popping buboes and bloodletting, I would say that nightmarish was actually the most accurate way to describe their line of work. Ugh. Another very unpleasant job up next. In at number 4 we have an executioner. So this job does actually still exist in some places in the Middle East, and indeed people will act as executioners in some states in the USA. However, this job was a staple in the more backward Middle Ages and was especially prevalent in the French Revolution. Now, as most developed countries have banned capital punishment, it no longer exists in most places. Back in the day though, the local hangman and guillotine operators were notorious in their town. Hangmen would be in charge of tying the noose and making sure deaths were quick. Guillotine operators, on the other hand, became celebrities in their own right during the French Revolution's reign of terror. Many execution audience members would chant their name and clap as they came out to do the deed, which is kinda weird. It may well sound like the high life, but being an executioner has always been a somewhat messy and morbid job that can weigh very heavy on the conscience. Coming in at number 3, joy of all joys, we have a leech collector. I don't enjoy a leech. Back in the day, especially in the 19th century, doctors loved a good leech for the practice of bloodletting. It was believed back then that the human body contained 4 humours: blood, black bile, yellow bile and phlegm. For a person to be healthy, these humours must be in balance. Sometimes humours had to be drained to achieve this balance, which meant that there was often a lot of bloodletting. Look. Leech collectors were usually women who collected the slimy creatures from boggy areas, often using their own legs to attract them, picking them off when they'd sucked up enough blood. Gross. As they were so often bitten by leeches in boggy areas, leech collectors were subject to infections and illnesses. So I'm not sure whether I would rather collect leeches or other people's vomit. Ugh, gross. Neither would be ideal. Probably leeches though. In at number 2 we have people that chose the latter. We have, of course, the classic vomit collector. So I suppose that vomit collectors still kind of exist in a way at theme parks, although really these are just park cleaners. Back in the Roman times, wealthy people would employ vomit collectors at banquets. Back in those days, feasts would last several hours and guests would vomit specifically so they could eat more. I mean, I love my food, but I think that's taking it a little bit far. They often did this in a special vomit collecting receptacle or simply chummed it on the floor. Those who deployed the receptacle emptied them and cleaned up the sick were the vomit collectors, and that must have smelled, well, you can imagine. Okay, so moving on from the disgusting to the actually kind of fun to finish this list. I really wish this job still existed because I think I would love it. Coming in at number 1, we have a bard. A bard was a musician, poet and storyteller who would be employed by a monarch or noble to literally sing their praises, which is probably actually where that phrase comes from. The bard would often follow its employer around telling musical stories of their accomplishments. So for example, if any of you have seen the Monty Python Holy Grail, this is like the minstrel who sings Brave Sir Robin. I really would enjoy either being a bard or having a bard. Can you imagine? Brave Rebecca was a YouTube host, she was great. Oh, she was. And then she made videos and went home and drank tea and what? That was really cringe. I'm so sorry. But I would like being a bard.
Number 10, we have cashiers. We all know that a lot of companies have been using automated machines for people to order what they want to buy. It's fast, it's cheap, it's easy. For example, if you guys go into McDonald's right now, there are those mini like big screens and you're like, oh, this is awesome. But for the people who work there, a lot of people probably lost hours, layoffs. These automated machines are very helpful for keeping the line short and moving quickly. But eventually, we won't need cashiers at all. Maybe just like one cashier or two to make sure the machines are still up and running. Also, buying things online has been eliminating cashiers because you can just check out online. I mean, no one has to cash you out. You just pay it, credit card, and it's delivered in front of your door. Number 9, we have travel agents. I've never used one. This is probably hence the reason why they're gonna be all gone in like 10 years. Over the recent years, I see more and more travel agent locations shutting down because I'm just not using them. No, it's because we're just not going there. And the reason why is because we're all becoming familiar with booking online. There are now websites and apps that make it easier than ever to book your dream vacation. Why do you need a travel agent when you can just type in hotels.com or go to Expedia? You can cut out the expensive middleman. The middleman you don't want. The middleman who's in your back pocket. The middleman who, yeah, you guys get it. Travel agents usually just direct you to hotels or flights where they get a little bit of commission, even if it's not the perfect trip that you want. It's still, it's decent. Even when you go to airports nowadays, you don't see a lot of travel agents at the counters of the airlines because, yeah, that's all animated as well. You can now check in online. You can walk up to the baggage area and it's animated. You can just beep your bag in, get the little sticker thing, and away the bag goes. Hopefully away to your destination and not lost. Post service comes in at number 8. With millions of people no longer feeling the need to send anything in the mail, this is a huge hit for the postal service industry. Technology is destroying the need for post service. It's much faster to text someone, email, or even to call them. You can also scan and send important documents if you have to. Forget about sending it in the mail. Way too long. Let's face it, post service is just too slow. The postal service used to be a huge booming industry, but now it's been at a red light for a while now. The postal service is actually losing a ton of money, which is why there's been major layoffs in major companies. Number 7 are taxi dispatchers and even taxi drivers. The taxi industry seems to be stuck in the past and didn't adapt or accept the new world and the technology world. Companies like Uber and Lyft are totally destroying the taxi industry. The taxi industry has constantly tried to battle Uber in court and doing protests, causing the company to burn millions of dollars. I think instead of burning millions of dollars, why not adapt to what's happening now? Create an easy app. You become the better Uber. I like Uber because you don't have to deal with money all the time. You just go in, you have a good ride, it's a rating system, you only pick up the people that have good rating systems. And taxi drivers, for some reason, all they want is cash. You go there, you're having a night out, you're a little bit tipsy, you don't have cash, you want to bring out your debit card, credit card, and for some reason, they're just gonna tell you to get out and you're stranded. You're drunk somewhere, stranded, you don't know how to get home. Well, this is when you Uber. So there's lots of problems with taxis. Well, right now there are places Ubers is actually illegal to be in, and it's just a matter of time. Uber is going to be accepted everywhere, and this is just horrible news for the taxi industry, obviously. Number 6, the weatherman. Waking up in the morning and putting the TV on to listen to the weatherman will be a thing completely in the past. Like when I get older, I'll be like, kids, I used to wake up and have to sit there through commercials watching the weather, and they're just gonna look at me like, what the heck is, my gramps is crazy. This is because the younger generation just doesn't have the patience to sit in front of a TV to listen to the weather, when we could just easily grab our smartphones and say, Siri, what is the weather today? Or you can go online and just type in what the weather is. And plus, why do we need the weatherman when we can just look outside? It's gonna rain today, and you look on the news and they're like, it's not gonna rain, but it's clearly raining right now, weatherman. Also, who's even watching TV these days? We have services like Netflix and YouTube that is destroying cable television. Alright, number 5, news vendors. That's right, news vendors won't be around in 10 years. Okay, it might be. The newspaper has been around since the 1600s. One of the biggest newspapers today, and of all time pretty much, is the New York Times. It's been around since 1851. That's 165 years. But because of technology and easily accessing news stories online, we no longer have to wait till the next day to find out about these big headline news stories. YouTube has become a great place to hear about news stories, and also on any social media platform. Twitter is always up to the minute with new information. A newspaper has to wait till the next day. If something happens, they have to wait until the morning to get it on the paper. Newspapers can be limited to how many stories and how many pages can be printed. With Twitter, there are millions upon millions of tweets that you can just read. You can read what people have to say, their comments, their responses. It's more engaging as well. What are you gonna do? Have a newspaper and write out your response to it and send it back to someone? And also, you get to access your word puzzles online. There really isn't much point in reading a newspaper these days. At number 4 is social media experts. It is obvious that social media has become very very prominent in our day-to-day living. Because of this, a lot of people are being hired on as social media expert managers. However, the skills and knowledge that are associated with the fields will become more common knowledge than specialized, and eventually people will be able to figure things out on their own without having to pay someone to manage their social media. We become the social media experts. I don't need an expert if we know how to do it. I can post a picture, do some hashtaggers. Moving into number 3 are telemarketers. There was a time when you absolutely did not want to answer your phone because you thought it was a telemarketer trying to scam you, or for you to sign up to something just useless. Like, I don't want to sign up to a newspaper service. Bro, I got the internet. Well, they still exist, but a lot of them aren't actually people anymore. They were replaced with automated robots, like robocalls. These robots are able to make more calls in less time while eliminating the need to pay employees. One upside to this, it is a lot easier to hang up on them because you don't feel so rude. Like, you're hanging up on a robot. Like, I don't care. They got no soul for now until we invent that. Now at number 2, we have manufacturing workers. This occupation is quickly dying, and it's been happening for a while now. The United States had to lay off several manufacturing workers over the years because we simply don't need armies of manufacturing workers like we used to. Factories have now become more automated, and manufacturing jobs have been relocated overseas where labor is cheaper, aka over to China. Unfortunately, these jobs aren't coming back, and they will most likely continue to disappear in the future. And finally, at number 1, we have... Am I reading this right? We have YouTubers? Okay, this is a very scary one to me, but I've learned that all great things come to an end, no matter how impossible it sounds. I mean, I don't think I'm going anywhere for a long time, but anything is possible, which is, it sucks. YouTube has been around since 2005, which is just 12 years ago. We have all learned that this is a world of technology and a world of competition. There might be the next YouTube platform that is much better. YouTube has made a ton of mistakes. Maybe there's something out there that has learned from YouTube's mistakes, and they're gonna create an even better platform. Hashtag no ad apocalypse. We have to be naive to think that YouTube will last forever, but you know what? YouTubers will just jump to the next best thing. We all know that we've had many YouTubers over parties, and we just experienced a YouTube boycott that eliminated a lot of big YouTubers. But actually some of them are slowly coming back. KSI is back, Scarce seems to be back. There's people coming back. Hashtag YouTube is here party.
Into it with our number 10, which is a target stabilizer. This man literally is an accident waiting to happen. Look at him. He probably joined the military having high hopes of being able to shoot his gun, but instead his sole purpose is to stabilize a target. This is like some twisted modern version of the Robin Hood shooting the apple off the head thing, except this is real, there is no apple, and they're using bullets. And if you're thinking he probably only has to do this for a little bit, then think again. He has his own special stool because he just sat there for hours. God bless. Well, I'm afraid our jobs don't get any better from here, guys. We're taking a look at number 9 now, which is the telemarketer. Now, we all know being called by a telemarketer sucks. Hello, sir, can I interest you in some special edition umbrella shoes? They keep your shoes wet in the rain. No, you can't. Leave me alone. Stop calling me. But have you ever thought what it's like to actually be a telemarketer? These people have to spend their entire day calling people who don't want to be called. Nobody wants to speak to you, and the only thing they do say is, can you please remove me from your calling list and never call me again? That's gonna get to you eventually. I'd end up being scared to call my own family in case they told me to stop calling them and just leave them alone. That would suck. But we're on to our number 8 now, which is the tower technician. Now, for those of you who don't know what a tower technician is, these guys, they're like the unsung heroes of our society because they do a job that I don't think anyone else wants to do. They climb 1,700 feet into the air to fix transmission lines and antennas that are used in broadcasting. Here's a picture comparing one of those to the Empire State Building. Yeah, they're very tall. They get an elevator ride up to 1,600 feet, but after that, they just free climb their way to the top. No harness, no safety net, it's just them 1/3 of a mile up in the air. One wrong move, and you're going to be falling for 9 seconds at about 152 miles an hour till you go splat. Now, I have mixed feelings about this job. It's about 50% respect, about 50% oh god no, oh god no, 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 no. But I'm going to pull myself together now and talk about our number 7, which is the paparazzi. Now, this is kind of similar to the telemarketer job because everyone hates the paparazzi. It's their job to hunt down and harass celebrities. Now, obviously, this is very annoying for the celebrities on the receiving end of this, but the paps themselves have a pretty rough job. It's their job to stalk stalk people and invade their private lives until that person gets so mad they lash out and attack them. For examples, see Britney Spears and Kanye West. Oh hey honey, did you have a good day at work? Yeah, I sat in a bush all day, actually, waiting for someone to leave a hotel, and when they did and they saw me, they punched my lights out. So, great day. And now guys, the sentence you've been waiting for all day, we're going to talk about watching the grass grow, because that's actually a job, and it's our number 6. This is Helen Southall, and she goes to work every day to watch grass grow. All day, she measures and records how grass is growing by examining single blades of grass in an area. She works for the British seed houses who want to find out the most efficient way to grow grass, and so 43-year-old Helen has been left in charge of that. In a typical day, she has to measure and inspect over 400 individual pieces of grass. And the next day, she has to do it all over again. Maybe one day, she'll quit her job and do something more exciting, like watching paint dry. But now we're at number 5, we are halfway through, and it is a crime scene cleaner. Now although shows like CSI might have glorified the job of rocking up to a murder scene and solving a crime without even breaking into a sweat, it's not all cool shades and leather jackets. In real life, someone has to clean up that mess. Some poor soul has to scrub the blood pool off the floor, remove the festering maggots left by the dead body, and pick off the pieces of brain stuck to the wall. You need to have a pretty strong stomach to deal with the sight of some murder scenes. Either that or you're just totally desensitized to death. And if business gets quiet, you actually get excited when the phone rings and you hear that someone has had their brains blown out. Not a thought I'd like to dwell on, so let's move on to our number 4 now, which is the crocodile trainer. That was a dog, that wasn't a crocodile. Now, if you ask me, I didn't know crocodiles needed training at all. You do you, big scary reptile. But apparently, when you see crocodiles in movies or at shows, they have to be trained to not eat the performers on site, which means some unlucky person has to spend months teaching crocodiles to stop seeing humans as walking meals. There have been videos online that show the crocodiles forgetting this important fact and clamping their powerful jaws down on trainers who, for entertainment purposes, are required to stick their heads in the croc's mouth. Ugh, that's the kind of job where you know you've had a good day if your head is still in one piece. But now we're going to talk about being a cook. No, not like a food cook, that's a pretty cool job. I'm going to be talking to you about a medical waste biohazard cook in at number 3. If you take this job, then it's up to you to dispose of medical waste. And I don't mean band-aids or pieces of cotton wool, I'm talking about the most gruesome things a hospital can produce. You'll have to steam bags of needles, urine, blood, teeth, semen and all kinds of other bodily fluids in a bag for 30 minutes. The smell of that is said to be overwhelmingly disgusting, and the cook actually has to wear protective gear to avoid contamination. So if you want to be a cook but you just can't stop eating everything as you make it, then this might be the job for you. Well, but if you fancy getting intimate with an elephant's genitals, then at number 2, you might want to be an elephant vasectomist. Sterilizing a male human by vasectomy is a fairly common, quick and easy procedure for a doctor to do, but things are a bit different when you're dealing with an elephant, the largest land animal on the planet. An elephant vasectomist has to use specialist equipment to cut their way behind 2 inches of skin, 4 inches of fat and 10 inches of muscle in order to get to an elephant's testicle and give it the snip needed to stop them reproducing. But don't worry elephant lovers, they only do this in areas where there's elephant overpopulation. And the elephants are sedated for the whole thing, so the only nasty thing about it is that you have to get up close and personal with an elephant's meat and veg every single day. Alright, we've looked at some pretty rough jobs, including crocodile trainers, murder scene cleaners, and those who have to cook every bodily fluid you can think of, but you might be tempted to take any of those jobs when you hear about our number 1, which is the flatus odor judge. That's basically a posh name for a fart smeller. Sometimes people make food products that give people bad gas. Sometimes these companies want to stop this if they can. Take, for example, a company that makes pinto beans, a very guilty food when it comes to making horrible guffs. They actually get a group of 16 volunteers to eat pinto beans and insert a small tube into their backsides. The gas they produce would then be transferred to a container where the flatus odor judges have to open up over 100 samples, one at a time, and smell their contents. Gag. They would then have to record how bad each one smelt in the hopes that they can make the next batch slightly less nauseating. And I really hope they succeeded in that, otherwise they're just smelling other people's farts for literally no reason. I call it torture, but apparently it's a job, and we've reached the end of the video guys, so you guys know what to do.
Coming in at number 10, we have crime scene cleaners. Crime Crime scene cleaners are mainly known as emergency service technicians, and their work is pretty intense. Some technicians have confessed to earning just $12 an hour to clean up murder and death scenes, which, ugh. The average salary is $33,597, which is around £26,000. This really isn't enough for me to want to clean up entrails. Also, the hours can be pretty antisocial. Coming into number 9, we have janitors and cleaners. Despite being a dirty job, often during less than desirable hours, cleaners and janitors are paid terribly. On average, they earn around $24,000 in the US and around £15,000 in the UK, so it pays even less in Britain. Depending on the building a cleaner works in, the job can be harder in some places than others. Some places can be really messy. Yes, it is unskilled work, but workers are cleaning up other people's mess, which is something I really wouldn't want to do. Coming in at number 8, we have news reporters. News reporter salaries are surprisingly low, and also the job is somewhat of a thankless task. These days, reporters will usually have to have a degree or a journalism qualification, or both, as well as faultless English and a flair for storytelling. For a skilled worker, the job pays an absolute pittance, especially in print media. In the UK, reporters' starting salaries are around £15,000, although they are also expected to own their own car. In the US, reporters start at around $22,000, with the average salary around $36,000. Reporters work around the clock to make headlines, and in the days of dwindling readerships, they usually have to go to great lengths to break news. This can earn reporters a lot of scorn from society. Scorn and a slim wallet. No ideal. Coming into number 7, we have sales assistants. You don't need a degree or any kind of qualification to get a job as a sales assistant, although you will need a lot of patience when dealing with often rude customers. A low-paid job, often with a high stress element, especially during rush periods, sales assistants often spend all day on their feet. It's pretty standard for sales assistants to earn minimum wage in most countries. If you aren't earning commission, which most people aren't, it's a very small paycheck for a lot of energy. Next up, we have daycare workers. Children are the most precious things in the world to parents, but sometimes they have to drop them off at daycare while they work. Nursery and daycare workers have to have a lot of patience and usually childcare qualifications, but sometimes they earn as little as $13 per hour in the United States. Daycare workers have to deal with screaming kids all day and earn just around $19,500 on average each. Ugh, no thanks. Literally, they have to clean nappies and everything. Diapers, to some of you guys. Gross. Coming into number 5, we have teachers. I know that there is a lot of tension with teacher wages in the UK right now. Teachers have to qualify over years and years and years. UK teachers earn around £30,000, and in the United States they make approximately $50,000, which is fine, but these people are tasked with teaching the next generation. Effectively, teachers help develop the minds of tomorrow. Further than that, they usually work really long hours. I know that in the UK, many of my teacher friends work from 8 AM till 6 PM at times, and then there's marking to do on top of that. Yes, they do get longer vacation periods, but I'm sure that they tell us that that isn't all time off either. These periods are usually filled with further training. Plus, also, working with kids is hard. They aren't exactly always polite. Next up, we have firefighters. Firefighters risk their lives to save other people. They have to deal with extremely hot temperatures and poor visibility. Sometimes they can't save people and they have to deal with the psychological impact of that too. They're not the lowest earners on the list. In America, they earn around $56,000 a year. In the UK though, they earn much less, at around £30,000, which again is a livable wage in most places, but really, these people deserve much more than simply livable. Especially when you consider the salaries of some CEOs out there, like they're saving people from burning buildings. Coming into number 3, we have agricultural workers. Agricultural workers or farmers are literally the backbone of so many countries. They harvest food for the nation, yet they often earn close to minimum wage. Everyone needs to eat, so why would the people who make that possible be earning so little? The average agricultural wage in the United States, a country vast with so much to harvest, is $22,000, although it is more in the UK, where farm workers get around £20,000. Of course, farm workers in India only earn $100 a month, which is crazy. Multimillionaire Bill Gates has stressed the importance of looking after the world's poorest farmers. By and large, they produce a very large share of the world's food supply. With the population on the increase, we all need to eat. Coming into number 2, we have graduate interns. Often internships are scandalously low paid, or not even paid at all. Sometimes you won't even get expenses, meaning you'll literally pay to work there. Sadly, unpaid internships are on the rise these days, meaning a lot of graduates are adding to student debt by paying for experience, which is so unfair. Often people will have studied for 4 years and be made to feel lucky if they get a low or unpaid job as an intern in their field, with like many big or smaller businesses alike exploiting youthful eagerness to their company's advantage. Often there is no promise of a job at the end of it at all, which is absolutely outrageous and it should be illegal. Finally, coming into number 1, we have factory workers. Factory workers are a dying breed in a lot of countries. In America, they earn on average $30,000 a year, which isn't a lot to scrape by on. Despite that cheap labor, they have it much better than the Chinese and Indonesians. In China, where the Trumps outsource their work, factory workers earn just $27 a day, although that's much more than in Indonesia, where they earn just $8.60. Sweatshop workers in Bangladesh work long hours in horrible conditions for $25 a month, so that is little more than 15 cents a day. That is outrageous. Coming in at number 10, we have the head shape reader. What? Officially called a phrenologist, a head shape reader would measure your skull and its contours and then determine a person's intelligence based on the geometric observations. This is where terms like well-rounded, highbrow, and lowbrow come from. While this practice had a steady following in Europe, it was most popular in 19th century America. Some people found the readings reassuring and empowering, others began to see it as a little bit racist. In the end, the process was stopped when it was discovered that head shape literally has no correlation to intelligence or any other personality trait. Coming in at number 9, we have log drivers. Back in the day before large lorries and trucks existed to transport timber, logs were floated down rivers to power water sawmills. These sawmills then cut logs into lumber. I imagine that fish are among the many species that are happy this practice no longer exists. Among many issues, log jams were pretty regular. This next job does still exist in some countries, but it is dying very quickly. Coming into number 8, we have coal miners. The UK famously closed the majority of its coal mines in the 1980s, with the last deep coal mine in the UK closed in December 2015. These days, energy is harboured in cleaner ways, and in 2017, Britain went a full day without using any coal power to generate electricity. This was the first time that had happened since the Industrial Revolution. In the US, mining still exists, but the entire coal mining industry employs less people than American food chain Arby's. Coal mining jobs are disappearing each day. In 50 years, there'll probably be no human miners left. A job that is now long gone. Coming in at number 7, we have pre-radar listeners. Now I can't help but have a little laugh when I see a picture of a pre-radar listener. They look like they're involved in a strange art installation and I kinda like it. But no, these guys are actually using Extremo earphones to listen out for enemy aircraft. The listeners predated radar, which revolutionized defense in the 1940s. Before that, in World War I and early World War II, these listeners were relied on heavily to stay one step ahead against the enemy. I mean, what a job! Can you imagine the fear that you would experience when you actually do hear something as well? Very stressful. Coming in at number 6, we have elevator operators, or as we'd say in England, a lift attendant. Have you seen the film Titanic? If so, you will have seen some classic lift attendant action. For these people, it was their job to move the elevator up and down and be kind of fancy while they did it. They would wear porter-style uniforms and ask things like, "Which floor, ma'am?" and you'd tell them 5, they'd press the button, it'd be very exciting. I feel like these were the ages of way more glamour. In those days as well, the elevators looked way classier, often with like ornate cages and stuff. Another job of times gone by, at number 5 we have film projectionists. Okay, so some old cinemas do still use film reels, but these are rare and those working as projectionists are usually volunteers that just love vintage cinema. These days, cinema has largely gone digital, meaning that there's no real need for manual or often even human labor. I will always think that there is something a bit more romantic about reel-to-reel cinema, but maybe I'm just old-fashioned that way. Coming in at number 4, we have switchboard operators. I can't imagine a time where, when calling someone, I didn't get straight to the person I wanted to speak to. However, in my grandparents' time, this was very much the reality. Calling someone was a process. Switchboard operators connected long-distance calls, or on a smaller scale, within big households or businesses. Back in the day, phone calls were not digitally managed, which meant that switchboard operators had to connect calls using a number of different wires, which sounds very tangly for me. I don't do well with tangly things. A ye olde job for the ladies at number 3, we have the wet nurse. Before the 20th century, it was very common, especially for upper class households, to employ women to breastfeed their children. Wet nurses were women who were not the baby's mother, who were paid money to feed often several babies at a time. This actually really freed the mother up, who no longer had the obligation of having to breastfeed her baby herself. This practice has been all but eradicated since the invention of baby formula. Coming into number 2, we have powder monkeys. Now, do you want to take a wild guess as to what on earth a powder monkey was? I'm gonna give you 3 seconds. Okay, so for those of you who guessed young boys in the Navy who had to carry gunpowder to the guns on board, then you get a gold star. For the rest of you, better luck next time. These young boys were sometimes illegitimate children, kidnapped and sent off to war without pay. Aside from the condescending nickname, these kids were in grave danger. They had to load explosive powder into huge guns while the ship was being fired at, which for me is not ideal. The least ideal job possibly of all time is coming into number 1. We have the groom of the stool. Ooh, yep, let's spare a few thoughts for all of the people in history who had this rather stinky job. Lovely. Lovely. The groom of the stool was a role apparently created by King Henry VIII, and the poor soul that had to fulfill it was in charge of monitoring his bowel movements, and also wiping his butt, which, ugh, giant king poo. No thanks. The groom of the stool used to carry around a portable toilet as well as a towel and a wash bowl. Their day was usually focused around when the king needed to poop. So gross. As the job was rather intimate, this was usually rewarded handsomely with good pay and extra perks, like lodgings in the king's palace. Mad King George actually loved the groom of the stool so much that he employed 9 of them, which I think means he pooped like a lot. One of his grooms of the stool actually went on to be Prime Minister of the UK, so there we go. The job stopped happening around the time good sanitary and private toilets were invented and clothing became less elaborate.